First, I'd like to recognize someone who unfortunately isn't here with us, not by her own doing. Her flight got rescheduled today. She was at the airport, but had to go back to work. Please put your hands together as we virtually recognize Her Excellency Ambassador Emmanuel Blattman, French Ambassador to Nigeria. Thank you very much for joining us virtually, and we apologize for the inconveniences that you've had to experience today. Now, joining me on stage, can we please put our hands together for Her Excellency Ms. Chim Clamera. And Ms. Chim Chalamera is the Country Director for the United Kingdom Department for International Trade. Can we please put our hands together for her as she joins us on stage? Thank you. And up next, we have the Canadian Deputy High Commissioner to Nigeria. Please put your hands together for His Excellency Teshome Nkrumah as he joins us on the stage. Next, we have the High Commissioner of the Republic of Namibia to Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Humphrey D. Gaiseb, as he joins us on stage. And we have the U.S. Consul General in Lagos, His Excellency William Stevens. And we have joining us Nigeria's High Commissioner to Jamaica and the Permanent Representative to ISA, who is joining us virtually, Her Excellency Maureen Tamuno. Thank you for joining us, ma'am. To stir this conversation with this rich crowd, or this rich cross-section of panelists, please, with a resounding applause, join me as I welcome the Vice Chairman, Channels Media Group, who is our moderator today, Mrs. Olushola Momo.
Thank you, Ms. Moderator. Good morning. Good. I just want to set a little backdrop to our plenary conversation this morning. About this time, some 33 years ago, precisely 5 days to now, that's November the 9th, 1989, the Berlin Wall came tumbling down. And it was such a momentous event to unfold in history. It clearly defined what we considered then to be an end to the Cold War between the East and the West. 1 year before then, in 1988, there was an end to the rumbling in the Arabian or Persian Gulf, brought about by the Iran-Iraq war, because the two countries now decided to accept the UN Security Resolutions 598, binding both of them. Afterwards, the world enjoyed a largely 30-year reign of what I will call relative peace, until in the late 2019, early 2020, when COVID pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, struck. And when it struck, we were all in shock. And of course, it brought about a lot of confusion. As if that is not enough, because we are beginning to make some sense out of the pandemic now and coming out of it, but something else is brewing. We are now witnessing a return to the Cold Order, Russia is asserting a superpower syndrome in Europe as it has defied NATO and taken on Ukraine in a war which is seen to be a rare occurrence in modern, or shall I say, even digital 21st century. This, coupled with other occurrences brought about by the climate change phenomenon, has resulted into flooding, natural disasters, insurgencies, terrorism, famine, food shortages, and hardship in many areas of the world. And all these have rocked the peace as we knew it. These have clearly been getting global attention and headlines, and have sort of drowned the clamor for the actualization of the UN Millennium Development Goals, one of which is a fight for gender inclusivity in all aspects of policy formulation and execution globally. But all thanks to organizations like WIMBASE for their strong commitment to staying the course and not allowing us to forget issues that relate to female women rights. And they continue to advocate gender inclusion in business, politics, in fact, every facet of our lives. They're organizing this conference again and want us to have a deep conversation around fine-tuning how we can be leading beyond borders. I'm surrounded by how many countries today? 6 countries. And boy, I can tell you that I'm feeling a lot of diplomatic immunity. I don't know if you can feel it here. You know what it means when you have diplomatic immunity. I promise you, I will share some with you if you promise to be good, to participate, to listen, and to enjoy the conversation. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this plenary on leading beyond borders. Thank you, thank you. You deserve part of the immunity. I promise I'll share with you. Now, I'd like to start with Ambassador Blackman, just to compensate you for all the trouble you had at the airport this morning. I cannot see you on the monitor. Are you Ambassador Blackman? Okay, so then, let's do ladies first, after the men. So, Ambassador Gisab, let's start with you, please. What do you make of this topic, and how would you say that leading beyond borders is working for you?
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, founders of WIMBIS, leadership, members, all the great women of Nigeria. I'm indeed happy to be here to join you from a country that we call Namibia, land of the brave. Indeed, it does not only mean brave men, but also brave women. I just want to give a context that during a long, difficult struggle for independence, women have laid down and sacrificed their lives for the freedom and independence of my country. Therefore, when in 1989, the representatives of the people met to draft the Constitution of Namibia, there were many women at the table to draft the Constitution of Namibia. So I just want to give that context, that we are coming from a country where women have played a leading role in the struggle for independence, and not only agitating, but sacrificing their lives as well. So this brings me to the topic, leading beyond borders. For me, it means what does Namibia do that will be an inspiration to the rest of the world? What do we do actively, day in and day out? Firstly, we have a number of vision documents, Vision 2030, Harambee Prosperity Plan, National Action Plan. The issues of gender mainstreaming, gender equality, protection of women and the girl child are issues that are daily bread and butter issues of the government of the Republic of Namibia. It's not an... These are not issues that we attend to once in a while or here and there. These are issues that are constantly on the agenda. And therefore, when we register some kind of progress, it is a result of concerted efforts. For example, our visions are aspiring that Namibia will be a safe and peaceful Namibia for its men and women, boys and girls, to live without to live without fear, want, and live in dignity. So all kinds of policies, programs, actual work is rolled out to ensure that that ideal becomes a reality. So Living Beyond Borders says that some years back, when we sent a peacekeeping contingent to Sudan, we managed to send an all-woman contingent, rank and file. So that shows you that gender equality is not something that we preach. It's something that we live, something that we put in practice. So therefore, I will also raise one more point. In Namibia, in a few weeks' time, the ruling party will have a Congress where it will elect its leadership. Right now, there is a campaign for the vice presidency of the party. Two of the candidates are women. Two of the three candidates. So out of three candidates, two are women. It's not something that happened overnight. It's a process that started just after the Beijing conference. When our women returned from Beijing conference, after, of course, the normal issues of presentations of the outcome and so on, what they agitated was to have equal number of men and women in leadership positions and in positions of decision making. That agitation led to a decision of the ruling party, the SWAPO party of Namibia. And after some time, a Congress, I think somewhere in 1997, the Congress took a decision to adopt that equal representation of men and women in leadership positions as a party official decision. Of course, like any other country, implementation takes a bit of time. And that decision took quite some time before it was implemented. But today, at least through the decision of the ruling party, other parties have also followed more or less a similar kind of arrangement. Through that decision that became known as the zebra policy. Some of you have seen the zebra policy. A zebra, it is having white and black stripes, white and black. For the party, it represents men and women in positions of leadership. So whenever you go to the branch or any kind of structure, you have an equal number of men and women. Just now I mentioned the Congress. In the Congress, you will have half of the delegates will be women, half will be men.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So you can actually see that these are issues that come from the grassroots, bottom-ups, from the decisions of the party rank and file. Okay, that is a party policy. We don't have a government regulation or a legislation that says there should be equal representation. But this policy has a moral influence so that whenever a board is constituted for, let's say, the water utility or the electricity utility, you will also have more or less a similar arrangement of equal number of men and women. But of course, you know, in the business world, sometimes boards are constituted with unequal numbers. So you can see we are trying to lead beyond borders by putting in place policies and programs that will benefit women and men, girl child and boy children. So therefore, the experience that we have and what we are doing is at least a model that goes far beyond the borders of Namibia. The last point, 2 years, almost a year ago, Namibia launched the International Women Peace Center because we believe in the agenda of Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security. We feel the presence of women is important for the attainment of peace and political stability. If you don't have women on the table, you cannot ensure peace. Quite simple.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Now, let's hear from Ms. Calamera. What do you make of this topic? How do you lead beyond borders?
Can you hear me? Yes. Fantastic. Thank you very much, and thank you, everyone. And thank you to Wembizi for having me here. I feel like a bit of an imposter, actually, because I was introduced as Excellency. Felt nice, so I shall take it. But unfortunately, I'm not one yet. So what does leading beyond borders mean for me? I think if you... I've got two perspectives. So from a personal perspective, if you had asked me this question about 11, 12 years ago, I would have had a completely different response, because at that point I was leading beyond borders, but the other way around. So I was a young, I'd like to think I was young at that time, black Malawian woman, leading a business unit within a UK global consultancy in the UK. So for me, that experience was very different because I was clearly a minority, sitting on a board in a construction sector with a board that was predominantly older, white males. Fast forward 12 years later, I'm in a slightly different scenario. So still, I think I'm still young. I claim I'm still young.
You are still young.
Thank you. Still black, still a woman, but this time as a British diplomat. So for me, working in the UK civil service has been a very interesting perspective in terms of what it means to lead beyond borders. For me, it's about the relationships, building relationships with your host nation. It's about how you represent your country within that host nation. It's about how you adapt both culturally, the environment, because you do get challenges when it comes to sort of leading different cultures, different backgrounds, personalities, and I've certainly learned quite a lot in Nigeria because, if you look at my team is extremely strong, extremely opinionated, loud, and those are just some of the not challenges, but those are areas where you need to maybe flex in terms of your leadership style, in terms of how you approach leading beyond the norm. And the second perspective is as a UK government. So from what we do, everything that we do is focused on mutual benefits, mutual prosperity, and that means a lot more now that we're out of the EU. It gives us an opportunity to reset our approach to how we lead by example, how we practice what we preach, how we forge relationships that, speaking from a trade perspective, which is obviously what I do, it's about how we create those mutually beneficial relationships, trading relationships. So for me, having that honest approach, having integrity, being objective, being impartial, they're all parts and parcel of the ingredients of being able to successfully lead beyond the borders that we're used to. And I think when it comes to the UK government's agenda around inclusivity, diversity, we're doing a lot, but we can certainly do more. We're not here to say, we are the champions when it comes to diversity, although I should probably mention at this point that across our various missions in the world, we have 64 heads of missions that are women, which represents 40% of our heads of mission. So we're doing our best in Nigeria, as some of you probably know. Our head of mission here, so the High Commissioner is a woman, Katrina Lang. The Deputy High Commissioner in Abuja is a woman, Jill Atkinson. I am clearly a woman as well. And we have several other women sitting within leadership positions across the mission. So we're doing our best to increase that ratio of representation of women, but we do appreciate and understand that there's a lot more that can be done.
Oh, well done. This is quite inspiring. The words from Namibia and the United Kingdom, they're really, walking their talk. It's so encouraging. Do you want to jump in on that HA Nkrumah? You also, you're the ambassador here, the Canadian ambassador to Nigeria, and you also superintend over trade relations. So do you want to jump in on that? Yes, and take it from there.
It is always a pleasure to follow in the heels of such a strong woman leader. Good morning. Thank you very much, Excellencies, distinguished guests, Wimbes. It is a pleasure for me to be in the company of so many strong Nigerian women leaders and to talk about leadership, leading beyond borders. I would start by saying, personally, when I talk on the subject of leadership, I always like to boil down leadership to a very simple axiom. It is basically leaders are there to make things better, right? And so leading beyond borders, I think, is a reflection of our collective responsibility to try to improve the condition, and in this case, with regards to gender equality. So from the Canadian perspective, about 20 years ago, Canada committed to use gender-based analysis treatment in the development of all of our legislation, our policies, and our programming, both domestic as well as international. So that means that gender equality is at the very core of our international engagement as well. I think the women in this room would acknowledge that tremendous progress has been made. And I think, we really should applaud you, and you should take a moment and really just absorb the fact that you have made tremendous strides. I was talking to the founder, one of the founders of Wimbiz, and she reminded me of the days back when having this conference and having 300 people attend was just mind-blowing. And here we have over 3,000 this year. So please. But of course, having said that, there's still a tremendous amount that remains to be done. Within Canada, I think Canadian women know this very well. Today, we are fortunate to be able to say that almost 50% of our cabinet ministers are women. I am proud as a Canadian to say that our head of state is an Indigenous woman, that our deputy prime minister is a woman, that our Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Trade and Defense are all women. This is sure, absolutely. Go ahead and applaud your Canadian sisters because they have fought the fight. Across our heads of mission network, 46% of our heads of mission, that's ambassadors, high commissioners, consul generals, are women, and that's in this year, and all of the appointments haven't yet been announced by the Prime Minister. So hopefully we'll also see that number increase as well. Why am I telling you all this? This is very laudable, but the reality is it took many decades of struggle to get there, and certainly the struggle's not over. We continue to try to make progress on the intersectional issues around gender and, religion, diversity, ethnic groups, sexuality. These are all still part of the struggle of really achieving gender equality because, as you know, women come in all backgrounds, linguistic, religion, etc. So it's very important for us also to remember that the struggle is never over, even in Canada where we've made significant progress. And to this day, I hope we will see very soon a situation where we have our first elected woman Prime Minister of Canada.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Wonderful. So I started off by saying, and I'll bring this to a close quickly, that because of our gender-based analysis approach, it means that our international engagement, our policies are informed by the pursuit of gender equality as well. And so what does that mean? It means that Canada played an important role in advocating for the establishment of a stand-alone sustainable development goal on gender equality, which is number 5, SDG number 5. It means that we were one of the first countries to ratify the Convention on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. It means that our foreign policy officially is a feminist foreign policy, and our international development policy is a feminist international development assistance policy. And this is not just sloganeering, it is a reflection of the fact that after decades of providing development assistance internationally, we learned that when you deliver assistance to women and girls, you have a greater impact. And so that's why our development assistance policy is a feminist international development assistance policy. But again, within the international space, the work is not over. I'm sitting here in the midst of very impressive leaders who happen to be women in Nigeria that run corporations, successful businesses. But in Nigeria, we see that you have one of the lowest rates of representation among elected officials. And I think that this is something that the women in this room are ably capable of changing. My last point is for the Canadian women who have achieved much and in their struggle, it was always by the consent of the Canadian voter. So I would leave that with you.
And if I may, the Canadian voters are mostly women, men?
Well, actually, I thought to look that up before I came, but you know, women usually are around 51, 52% of the population. So I think the majority of the population is women, but whether or not those who vote, who are at voting age, are women, I don't know.
Very good. I mean, Wimbes, I don't know how you did this. You must have put a lot of thought in selecting the panelists here. Well done, Wimbes. All I'm hearing, you know, is so inspiring, encouraging, and very promising. So there is hope in the horizon. I'm sure Nigeria will get there. I want to bring in Ambassador Tamino. Can we see? Yeah. She's on set. Ambassador Tamino, this is a tough act to follow, but I'm sure, you know, you also must have your views, and you must have some success story that you want to share with us. But in the midst of it, please try and also let us into your thinking. How are you leading Beyond Borders?
Thank you very much, moderator, and I'd like to thank the Wimbys for having me. First and foremost, I want to bring you warm greetings from Jamaica, the land of wood and water, and to say that I have a member of Jamaican Parliament seated right there in the hall with you and watching me speak to you. It's been so interesting, and I'd like to say it's a little bit difficult talking after Canada has spoken, considering what we're doing in Nigeria. I agree that we haven't started yet. We are very much underrepresented, like you know, and but I think we're a work in progress. We need to keep moving. We need to keep pressing. The issue about the 35% affirmative action that you know is just said by mouth. It's not being implemented. But with the caliber of people we have in the room, and for some of us that have had to, you know, beat the stereotypes, you know, we're able to find ourselves where we are. But I think more laws and more policies has to work in favor of women. First, I will attempt to give a definition to leading beyond borders before I go to telling you about my thoughts and how we can go forward. I'd like to quote James McGregor Bones, who has a concept that leading beyond borders has transcending leadership. He described it as leadership that transcends boundaries of one's profession. And I had to share in a school of thought, thereby defining leadership beyond borders as one being able to perform roles and responsibilities assigned to you as a person at any given time, at any given place. In very simple words, I say being able to deliver on defined roles and responsibilities accurately, irrespective of stereotypes. Part of the things that inhibit us in Nigeria is culture, like you know, the narratives, pathological narratives, they hinder us, religion, so many things. And I'd like to share my story a bit in trying to define and to speaking on this. When I was to run as a member of House of Assembly, there was this saying, oh, she's not from here, my husband is from here, I'm from there, you go to your place. You know, there is this trying to, a woman's identity, you know, was in question, even though there is a law that says once you've lived in a place more than 2 years, you're allowed to vie. But guess what? I had the popular support of the women. And like you know, women constitute about 52% of the population. But when it comes to matter of leadership, we're not there yet. But with the support of the women at the grassroots at that time, I was able to defeat 3 men that teamed up and became one to run with me for an election. And then I went into the House of Assembly. What this simply tells us is that we must be resilient, we must be purposeful, we must be determined to strive and then work together. And also to say, although in 2010, the National Bureau of Statistics report showed an improvement on girls' access to education. Like you know, when you educate a woman, you educate a nation. This is quite important for us as women to make sure that our girl child and the children go into school. and I educated within the formal education space and informal education. Like what you're doing now is quite informal. And then I know with what we're doing, it will help us, build a consensus, especially with the amendment of the Act. I tell you this time, there will be no running with ballot boxes. The votes will count. It's just that, most of the primaries were done already. And then we start looking at what we could do. I'm sure as we go further, I'll be able to explain and to tell you a bit more of how we can go. How am I leading Beyond Borders? I sit representing 3 other countries apart from Jamaica. I also represent Nigerian's permanent representative on the International Seabed Authority. And that gives me the enablement to sit on an informal group where I speak to 167 countries. And of course, that is not very easy. Like, there's a lot of politicking, when you sit over there. And also, when we are across the borders, like we are right now in Jamaica, you need to be able to have to deal with your countries you represent in terms of bilateral relations, having mutual understanding, in whatever things you bring to the table. So it's been quite exciting and it's been quite challenging. And I think we'll have to move forward as Nigerians to ensure that we get more women to participate in leadership. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Tamino. Thank you for your tenacity. Now, let me ask you. I was told that there are about 17 Nigerian female envoys out there now, out of, I think, 75?
Out of 109, so it's still less than 20%, but no. It's a progress from what it used to be.
Okay, so it's 17 out of 109. Yeah, that's about 15%. Yeah. So,
thereabout.
Yeah. It's not something not to cheer, but it's something we can definitely, improve on. Like you said,
definitely.
We are still a work in progress. Thank you. Thank you for what you do. Last, not the least, let's bring in His Excellency William Stevens. He's the Consul General, United States Consul General to Nigeria. So do you want to share with us what leading beyond borders really mean to you and how you're doing that?
There it is. Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's a real honor to be here with you. I send the regrets of our wonderful female ambassador, Ambassador Mary Beth Leonard, who is in Abuja today, and I know would have loved to have been here with you today to celebrate all of your accomplishments. I wanted to start with something you started with, which is, I believe, an incredibly important and chapeau to this conversation as you talked about Russia's brutal invasion of its neighbor. And what do we mean by borders? And what are the problems that we face? Where one country doesn't recognize the sovereignty of its neighbors, where they invade and murder and rape and kill women and children. It's despicable, and it's not a problem for, and this is what I'm trying to say today, is leadership is about taking ownership for the problems we all face. So I'm going to disabuse you of a statement that I think you're going to be shocked when I say it. For so many years, we have talked about African solutions to African problems, right? I'm here to tell you that is wrong. We need to be talking about African solutions to global problems. And for me, that is what it is about leading across borders. It's about working together, partnering with our partners here in Nigeria to find the problem answers and solutions to the problems that vex us all. Because climate change is not a United States problem, it's not a Canada problem, it's not a Nigeria problem, it is a global problem. And we cannot solve it alone. Food insecurity, because of Russia's invasion, is not a problem for just Nigeria. It's not a problem for just Egypt or the United States or Canada, it's a problem for the entire world that's leading to increased instability. The floods that are leading to an 8% increase in rice prices just here in Nigeria are not just a Nigeria problem, because when prices go up here, they go up globally. Any of you who trade internationally know that your market prices are not dictated in Nigeria, they're dictated globally. So please think of yourselves as global solution finders, and think of yourselves as partners, because you are global citizens, and that puts a little bit of a responsibility on you. And I think, sadly, women bear so many responsibilities around the world. But the responsibility to solve these problems is on each of us. And when we take that ownership and recognize, like, I can contribute to this, that's when we start to find solutions. So I'll get off my soapbox. But it's such a great topic, and it really is, like, it's a perfect chapeau to our foreign policy. As President Biden, who has the first female vice president in the history of the United States, the 45% of his cabinet are female, 60% of his cabinet are minorities. And it is, obviously, you know that President Biden talks about diversity and inclusivity in our foreign policy, and it is a key element of what we're trying to do. But really, it's about partnering and working together, and recognizing the problems that we all face. And I'm here to tell you, we're not perfect in the United States. We make mistakes. We talk about those mistakes, and then we rely on our partners to help us fix them. And so thank you for being the leaders who you are today. I'm happy to give you some very detailed things of what we're doing to support business and women here in Nigeria. We've partnered with WIMBIZ in the past on some of those programs, and I'm looking forward to doing more of that. But thank you, and help find some solutions to those global problems. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I like that, you can make mistakes and you look for global partners to solve the mistakes with you or for you. I like that. Now, I'm told that the French ambassador is now joining us virtually, somehow. So,
Hi.
oh, wonderful! Finally,
Finally,
we can hear.
Actually, I was online from the beginning.
Oh, you.
So I've heard everything. So I'm here.
Oh, guys, this popular Nigerian saying that you cannot shave someone's head in their absence. So we were actually shaving your hair in your absence. Sorry about that. So you've heard us, and let us hear you, Ambassador Blackman. How are you leading Beyond Borders, and what are your introductory comments to this plenary?
Yes. Well, thank you very much, first of all, for having me. And I really apologize for not being able to make it physically, but this is, I guess, the usual wahala with Nigerian airplanes. I was at the airport at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't make it. So I'm very sorry, because I was looking forward to be there personally. If you allow me first, maybe a few more personal comments about leading beyond borders. I think leading wherever you are and whatever the context is always a kind of challenge. But leading beyond borders can be even more challenging, especially maybe for a diplomat, and even more maybe for a female diplomat. First of all, internally, when you're managing a team of expats plus local staff, often in a very multicultural environment, it requires maybe to be more careful with your staff. You have to make sure that the people are not too isolated, that they blend in their new environment, that their families are coping. Living abroad, far from your family, your friends, can be very difficult, even actually for the person who is in charge and who is leading. And sometimes you even make sacrifices, to go abroad as a diplomat. You leave your spouse or children at home. And anyway, it requires a lot, I think, of team building efforts and lots of socializing efforts, and to be careful about, balancing private and professional life. And I think it's even more true for women who have to take care often primarily of their children. Externally, it can be also a challenge, to leading beyond borders, because you need to adapt every 3 or 4 years to a new environment, to a new culture. You start all over again, new networks, new language. And as a diplomat, and especially as an ambassador, you also represent your country. So kinds of puts a lot of weight on your shoulders, because whatever you do, whatever you say, can have an impact on the image of your country. So it's even more necessary abroad than in France, I would say, to lead by example, to defend your values. But at the same time, you have to respect and understand the local traditions, the culture, the habits. So we must be humble, we must listen. We're not here to give lessons. So that's one challenge I wanted to note. And maybe being a woman, can sometimes be even more challenging in some societies. It's difficult. It's more difficult to be accepted. Sometimes you have to work harder to prove your legitimacy, even inside the embassy, to prove that you're not just there because of the quota policies. And sometimes also it's difficult to preserve your personal life. And I've noted that often French women ambassadors are single, and I feel very sorry about that. Personally, I'm lucky to be married and to have raised 4 children, but I know that sometimes it can be hard to ask a spouse, a man in particular, to give up his own career, to live socially or financially, in your shadow. And even, it's even worse by being we're very far from everybody. So that's tough. Can be tough also for the children, changing country, changing schools all the time. Some of them have trouble to adapt. But this is also why our situation maybe is not as positive as the one that has been described by the previous speakers. I must say that in France, unfortunately, we have made a lot of progress, but we still have a lot to do. Over the last 10 years, we went from 12% only of women ambassadors to 31% of women in leading positions in my ministry. So it's not that good. We're still far from the 50%. But we have made progress for the first time, for the second time actually in our history. France has currently a woman prime minister, a woman minister of foreign affairs, and our 3 ministers of state. Out of the 3 ministers of state we have in my ministry in Paris, 2 are women. So it's work in progress. For the first time, actually, in all history, we have a female permanent secretary at the ministry. So things have moved forward, but actually, to get there, to achieve that, it was really tough. And to be even more honest with you, it has only been possible because of the quota policies that just I was not personally really 100%, but then it's the only way that it works. So, and you might be surprised to know that all these new laws have only been passed over the last 10 to 12 years, and so it's with gradual goals, but also financial penalties. And I think, unfortunately, that's what worked the best. To be very clear, if a political party today in France does not meet 50% of candidates for the elections, for instance, well, he will have to pay a fine. If the Ministry of Foreign Affairs doesn't meet its gradual objectives. For instance, in 2020, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was supposed to have 40% of women ambassadors, let's say, and well, we didn't meet that thing, so well, we had to pay. So, and I think that when you hit on the wallet, it actually goes faster. It's a bit sad to say, but it's that. But then the other thing I really wanted to stress is that whatever we do, and I think I hope that we will have time to discuss a bit about what France is doing in its feminist diplomacy. I'm very passionate about that. But just to say that without strong political will from really up, it cannot happen. So it's a great thing that President Macron has decided that during his 2 mandates, the first one and second one, the biggest priority of his mandates, the national cause, will be gender equality, and that helped a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador.
I hope you heard me.
We heard you loud and clear. And
Okay.
while we are with you, we don't want to lose you, so we just want to remain with you just for a little bit while, a little bit longer. Now, you have a huge portfolio. As you have oversight functions over Nigeria and ECOWAS, do you see any social or cultural issues common to the subcontinent that may be fueling gender disparity? And if yes, how is your country helping to correct such?
Okay, thank you very much, Zola. First of all, I want to say that women and girls face difficulties and discrimination in all parts of the world and in all countries, including in France, as I just I think made it clear. Of course, in some areas, it is clearly more difficult. Because of the local context, because women and girls are very often indeed more affected than men by poverty, conflicts, war, terrorism, climate change, and global warming, tensions about natural resources. There are so many socio-economic inequalities that are at the core roots of crisis and conflicts, in which women are often and mostly all the time, the primary victims. Even in wars, sometimes sexual violence can be used as a weapon of war, with the aim of terrorizing the populations. Women are also generally, speaking, also more likely to suffer from poor access to health care services, particularly for maternal, child, or sexual reproductive health. And I want to say that the COVID-19 pandemic made it, really sometimes even worse in many countries of the continent, and in France also, in Europe, in other continents. I mean, the rise of domestic violence was noted everywhere because of the confinement, for instance, but also the economic slowdown hit hardest, the women, as we know that they are a majority in the informal and precarious work sectors. But as we consider that, gender inequality, it has been said, I think, by our American colleague, but it's a barrier to effective, sustainable development, as it limits or restricts women's access to resources, decision-making opportunities. So low representation and exclusion from governance or politics, is a major hindrance to sustainable economic and human development. But at the same time, it has been proven, according for different reports, such as the Global Gender Gap Report or by the World Economic Forum, that women's political leadership has positive societal benefits, such as inequality reduction, increased prioritization of social issues such as health and education, and faster development. So what we are doing is that we have both internally, and I mentioned the laws that were passed for France, but externally, we have set up an international strategy for gender equality that we called our feminist diplomacy. It has different aspects, but maybe just to focus on a few of them, not to take too much time. But of course, the first thing is to advocate. We're doing a lot of advocacy on gender equality in all international forums. on all issues, all aspects: peace, security, promotion of rights, fundamental rights, climate and economic issues, all sustainable development, that all have an impact on women's situation. We also, on the development side, because we strongly believe that sustainable development goes with gender equality, we have committed that by 2025, 75% of all the projects funded by France's official development agency, the AFD, will help to improve gender equality. Right now, we stand around 40%. Between 40 and 50%. For instance, just an example concretely here in Nigeria, the AFD is financing a big vocational training in the electricity sector. Well, right now, the finances will only flow if 40% at least of the beneficiaries of the program are women. So this is the kind of thing we do because it raises awareness, but it's also a way to change mentalities, on the ground. By being very concrete. We're also working hard to mobilize more financial, resources for equality actions. And I just want to remind that in June 2021, we hosted in France the big Generation Equality Forum you might have heard of. It was in June 21. It was co-organized by France and Mexico, with UN Women, and there were huge pledges that were made to in that. I mean, it was a historical global feminist event, maybe the most important one since the Beijing World Conference, on women in 1995, and there was a global acceleration plan for gender equality that was launched, and with 1,000 tangible and ambitious commitments that were made. And the historic amount of $40 billion pledge were raised. So that was great. And for France, as far as France is concerned, we pledged to put 400 million euros on women's sexual and reproductive health and rights, and also around 170 million euros for girls' education. This is an example. But we also, for instance, President Macron created a fund that is called the Support Fund for Feminist Organization that was created 2 years ago. And it's we put 120 million euros in this fund to finance projects and support for feminist organizations over 3 years. And there are different other funds or initiatives that we are financially supporting, such as the Global Survivors Fund, which is led by 2 Nobel Prizes to help victims of conflict-related sexual crimes or victims. And also, for instance, the AFAWA initiative, which is a affirmative finance action for women in Africa so that they access finance more easily. So I'm not going to go into all details because I guess it would be too long, but just to mention that here in Nigeria, of course, we have our fundings on through different ways. We have specific funding. It's called PISCA, where we started in 2020, and we've already supported 10 NGOs specifically on women's rights, fighting against gender-based violence, and also empowering women and more vulnerable women. The French agency, also for development is really integrating, gender aspects in all its programs, but it's also financing through its Proparco, which is its subsidy for the private sector. There are lines of credits that are attributed, I think it's around 100 million euros, that are attributed to local financial institutions to support specifically women entrepreneurs. So I'll be happy to answer any other questions, but I don't want to be too long. So thank you so much once again for having me.
Thank you. Now let's move to Chim. Chim, is your question now. I know the UK has had a period of political topsy-turvy. Thankfully, it's now been steadied. What are we to expect from Prime Minister Sunak's government in terms of focusing on particular trade elements that can promote gender inclusivity in Nigeria and the entire continent of Africa?
Right, sorry. Yes, no, fantastic question. I'll probably start by saying our Secretary of State for International Trade, who was appointed by Prime Minister Sunak, is not only the International Trade SOS, she is also the Minister for Women and Equalities, and also happens to be a woman of Nigerian heritage, so Kemi Badenoch. So she is responsible for our international trade agenda, as well as our agenda when it comes to women and equality. So I think that, for us, is a fantastic start. I don't know if it was by design, but it's certainly a fantastic start. And I should probably also add the Prime Minister's trade envoy to Nigeria, also a Nigerian Brit, Helen Grant, PM, is also responsible for, she's also the special envoy for girls' education. So I don't know if it's by default or design that we have women leading our sort of trade discussion, trade dialogue, but they're also responsible for our women equalities, girls' education agenda. What that means is as the UK government, we place a very heavy importance when it comes to supporting women businesses, supporting women-owned businesses that want to trade with the UK. We have a number of programs that we fund and we support. Some of them are our own programs. So for example, we've got the Working Opportunities Women program, WOW, which essentially supports women's economic empowerment and increasing women participation when it comes to the discussions around economic empowerment, prosperity, and the like. We also support a program which I think the Canadians, Swedes, Norwegians, and a whole host of other countries are supporting, called She Trades. And as part of that, we support women in terms of training, mentorship, coaching, and the like. There are a whole host of other programs that I can talk about that support and promote women, both in terms of business, in terms of trade, and prosperity across the board. And it's all well and good me sort of saying the things that we're doing internationally, but a lot of what we pride ourselves in is sort of that leading by example. So whilst we support all these programs internationally, at home we're also doing our bit to have an increased representation when it comes to women in business. We have, for example, the Gender Equality Roadmap, which essentially looks at how we get a more level playing field and put some of the challenges when it comes to gendered inequalities affecting both men and women. So understanding the underlying challenges and finding solutions that work for everyone. In the UK, as an example, we have a lot of women, probably more women, entering the workforce who have higher qualifications than men, but when it comes to pay, they're actually getting less pay than the men. So that's something that, as a government, we've recognized, we've acknowledged. There are a whole host of other challenges that affect women being able to actively participate in business, in trade. It could be related to childcare responsibilities. It could, I think in the previous panel, there was a discussion around some of the disadvantages as a woman. We're seeing a lot more single-parent households, for example, which are women-led, but we're still expecting those women to excel. So it's how we provide them with the tools and the support to enable them to increase their activity, do business not just within the UK, but also internationally as well. So we're doing things both internationally as well as at home.
Wonderful, excellent. I hope Wimbys is listening and taking notes, because we really need to expand this conversation beyond now and match those who need the funds with the fund givers. Now let me come to H.E. William Stevens, who, if we decide to take a popular vote now, I'm sure he will be the most popular man on this panel. And don't ask me why. Don't ask me why. Well, you've been as power, when I say you, I mean the United States, with the government of Nigeria in the recent weeks or days. To begin with, has the diplomatic row been resolved now?
That's a good question. What I would say is it's our job as diplomats and as governments to do the best we can to protect our citizens. And as a foreign policy, we aim to do the same things. I think, I've lived in a lot of different countries. I think there's two things that people really care about. They want to feel safe, and they want their children to have a more prosperous future than they had. And I think both of those are incredibly important to this audience today. So our foreign policy centers on exactly that. Sharing security information, building a robust response to transnational threats, working together to combat the threats that face you and me here in Nigeria, but those threats also face people in the United States, as you talk about narcotics and other things, but also working together on economic prosperity, because some of those threats and crime spread directly from lack of opportunity, which is really where we're focused here in the United States. When it comes to women, it's working together to empower women to own businesses, so and empower women to lead healthy lives. If you look at U.S. assistance to Nigeria, it's a little bit over $1 billion a year. I mean, it's a big number, $1 billion a year. I'm not quite sure what that is in Naira today.
Don't go there.
It's a little bit of a wahala, as they'd say. but you can do the math. But more than half of that is focused on health. And when we talk about health, it's almost entirely women's health. It's women and children, it's orphans and vulnerable children, it's HIV/AIDS, it's maternal health, and what it looks like is augmenting rural clinics. So I went to a clinic outside of Uyo just last week, and through USAID funding, nearly 40% of the staff are there funded by the US taxpayer. And what are they doing? They're testing people, and they're giving treatment to HIV-positive women so they don't pass HIV on to their children when they have a child. It's incredible, and we're keeping, just in Uyo, there was 180,000 people alive who live with HIV/AIDS on life-saving ART. So that is incredibly valuable for women leaders, women owners of businesses. You have to have a market, and that market has to be healthy. The second aspect of that assistance is really about supporting women businesses, women-owned businesses. Some of you have participated in and supported the Academy for Women Entrepreneurs. Or do we have any AWE mentors? Woo! Yeah, okay. So the Academy of Women Entrepreneurs is a program we run at our American Corners here throughout Nigeria to train aspiring female entrepreneurs and help them take their business idea from ideation to pitch to funding. And part of that program is to connect them with you. So we partnered with WinBiz last year, and we got 100 Nigerian people from WinBiz to mentor these women entrepreneurs and help them. And then, through the U.S. Africa Development Foundation, USADF, we provide direct funding to them through grants, up to $50,000 grants to start their businesses. And I got to see one of them when I was in Port Harcourt last week, just to hear how this incredible young woman who's in interior design pitched and is doing kind of upscaling of recycled tires to create furniture. Absolutely incredible. And I just, one thing I love about Nigeria and why I begged to come here, I begged for this job, is each and every one of you. I have never met a Nigerian who sees a problem they can't overcome. I have never And it's not easy here, right? It's tough. There are a lot of problems that we all face each day. And yet that ability to fix it and get better is so inspiring and something that I just am incredibly proud to be a part of and be here with you. So I know that was far away from the question you asked. And I hope that I'm popular not for that question, but because I think there's a lot that we're doing together, and I think that's there's so much in common between Nigerians and Americans, so much that we share. I'm really looking forward, I hope you all are. Black Panther is premiering here in Lagos. On Sunday night, I'll be there at the premiere. The connections in our entertainment and creative industries, the connections in the tech industry. I have to say, because one of them's here right now, but if you look at who's leading the US tech companies in Nigeria, it's women. Who's the head of Google Nigeria, West Africa? Who's the head of Microsoft? Who's the head of Citibank? As we look at these huge American companies that are based here in Nigeria and are investing, I don't know if I have the exact statistics, but every time I meet with someone, it's an incredible Nigerian woman who's in charge, and I'm just so proud of that and so proud of those connections. So thank you.
So much. So that's so true. Thank you, Will. Now, H.E. Humphrey Gisab, Namibia and Nigeria are known for rich mineral deposits and are largely now export-driven. Global evidence suggests that while the benefits of extractive industry projects are captured primarily by men, women often bear a disproportionate share of social, economic, and environmental risks. Are there things your country is doing that we can learn from to add value to these products and create more economic gains for our people before they are shipped abroad?
Thank you very much, moderator. I will answer your question in a while. But let me also reflect on what we have in common with Nigeria. Our people are staying here during the struggle. We have more than 300 students in federal colleges here studying in Nigeria. The High Commissioner that I replaced is somebody who was a student in Enugu. Enugu, yeah, he studied in Enugu. Unfortunately, he passed away this year. We have a lot in common because Nigeria was the only African country that considered itself a frontline state when Southern Africa was fighting against colonialism.
That is true, Nigeria. I think we should clap for ourselves. That's so true.
Thirdly, when you sing your national anthem, in that anthem, there is a reference that says, "The labor of our heroes past shall never be in vain." It includes the experience of Namibia, because your labors, like Murta Mohammed and many others, they labored for the freedom of the people of Namibia. We will never forget that. Never shall we forget that. So we have a lot in common. Namibia today exports salt. We are bringing salt to Nigeria. It's possibly our biggest export. Secondly, we are bringing electronic radios. So we are mainly bringing two items here. There is a lot that we have in common. If you take shea butter that is popular in Namibia, it's equally popular in Namibia. So there is a lot of opportunities for Nigerian women in WIMBIs and in other organizations to explore how can they team up with their counterparts in Namibia and export shea butter from here, from Nigeria to Namibia. There's a lot going on in Accra in terms of the African continental free trade area. I mean, once it is concluded, the burden will be on Nigerian women, Namibian women, to make it a reality so that we exploit the opportunities that are provided. In terms of extractive industries, yes, Nigeria has been producing oil for a number of decades. And in that regard, you know, this year started with us without any Namibian knowing that we have huge deposits of oil. But we found oil just a few months ago, and definitely we are going to draw on the experience of Nigeria on how we can go about to ensure that Namibian people will benefit from the oil of our country. In terms of mining, women are free to own mining licenses. Unfortunately, Namibia and Nigeria, we are developing countries. Unfortunately, at times we don't have enough capital, and we have to team up or partner with the rest of the world in terms of financing technology so that we can exploit our natural resources like mineral resources. There's a lot of legislation in place to protect Namibian women against all forms of exploitation. And I can leave you with a few thoughts. I know in Nigeria, and I want to really commend Nigeria for the bills that were drafted to increase the representation of women in the House of Representatives and in the Senate. That's a good direction that Nigeria has started. If you compare the situation to 2019, today the situation has changed quite considerably. So Nigerians must be commended for that achievement. It's a solid, concrete achievement. Let me give you one example from Namibia. When we drafted our constitution, we provided for free education. But unfortunately, when children were going to school, they would be asked to pay admission fees, school development fees. These or those fees were applicable. Until in 2010, it was agreed that Namibia will have free education. Nothing will be paid. No child will pay anything. And the same with free health. We have free health, free education. But once it is provided for in the legislation, unfortunately, sometimes it takes a while to implement it. So definitely a better days ahead for Nigeria because you have started a good direction. So thank you very much, moderator. I forgot to include the number of women in parliament and in cabinet. I mentioned that two of the three candidates that are vying for vice president and who are likely to be front runners for the election in 2024 for the presidency of the Republic of Namibia, two of them are women. They are prime minister and deputy prime minister themselves.
Wonderful.
And we have a number of women ministers. Our number of women diplomats are quite high, more than 30%. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just a quick thought. Ambassador Blackman was talking about France, and he says in France, if they don't meet the affirmative actions, that they get to pay a penalty. And because of that, the fear of paying the penalty, they actually run to meet it. Can that work in Nigeria? In Nigeria, if we say pay, will they not rush to pay? Or what do you think? Will they pay? They'll pay and get on with it. So I don't think that we would encourage that in Nigeria. In Nigeria, we will say you just have to have the numbers. No getaway. You don't have to have an option of a fine. Just make sure that you put the women's there. And I think that is the critical thing now. That is what WIMBIs should be looking at. I know you've started looking at the political landscape. Please do more in that regard, because everything begins with policies. If you do not have the policy, you cannot implement. And of course, as we've heard, there must be a lot of intentionality to go with it. You must be deliberate. You must stay the course. You must remain with it. It's a lifelong process. So please, Wimbes, don't give up. And I know you won't. Now, no, not just yet, moderator. Let me allow H.A. Nkrumah to just come in here, briefly talk about your trade. I know that your resume is quite intimidating and imposing. I don't know if there's anything more you want to show off from Canada's point of view. Is there anything quickly?
Well, since
Yeah.
okay, that was it. It doesn't work if it's not turned on. Thank you, moderator, for that question. And since I know we're running short on time, but we have the benefit of having a business audience here, and I run a trade office. So I would be abused by my colleagues back at work if I did not use this as an opportunity to talk about our trade relationship with Nigeria. So we have currently a bilateral trade figure of around $2.7 billion per year, which is not a lot. Canada is a trading nation. I'm very happy to say that that favors Nigeria, $2 billion in terms of exports to Canada and 700 million Canadian exports to Nigeria. But since I have been here, one thing that I have discovered is an incredible appetite for Canadian business people to discover the opportunities in Nigeria and to connect with Nigerian-based businesses, to do business. And so that's one of the things that we do, is to make those introductions and those connections possible. So we have a trade diversification strategy, which really is looking at diversifying Canada's exports to new markets, and Nigeria is one of those markets that we're very interested in having a stronger presence in. And it's also about diversifying who exports. So, this means making sure that we have more SMEs, more women, more people from visible minority backgrounds and indigenous people exporting as well. And so what I'm very interested in doing is being able to connect you, those of you who are interested in exporting, those of you who are interested in discovering markets in Canada. I'd be very keen to work with WinBiz and others to make those introductions possible. And because companies that export, women-led businesses, all businesses that export, they grow faster, so they're much more profitable, and they tend to be a lot more successful in terms of competition. So if you're a businesswoman here today, please contact our office. We would be very pleased to make some introductions for you.
Thank you so much. Now, just as we bring this plenary to a close, I'd like to give Ambassador Tamino an opportunity to come on and make some more remarks. And the question that I want to ask you, Ambassador Tamino, there is a young lady in this audience, or probably even watching online, and wanting to become an ambassador, and wondering what she should be getting ready, how she should be prepping to become one. Now, could you please talk to her and let her know how she can actually actualize this dream? Ambassador Tamino.
Thank you very much. I would like to say that that young woman is in the right place and also at the right time. Like I said, when you stop learning, you start dying, informally and formally. First, if there are two types of, two ways to get into being an ambassador. Like I am a non-career ambassador, there's also the career ambassadors. That person needs to have a first degree in any of the social sciences, in arts and in law, and relevant fields to become a career ambassador, get into the civil service, especially the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and grow through the ranks. And with prayers and resilience and good performance, good reputation, she will be appointed as an ambassador. But what I would want to talk about is the aspect for which I represent, which is the non-career ambassador. How will you be able to go up the ladder as a Nigerian woman? Like you've heard from the American ambassador, Nigerian women are very talented, we're very resilient, we perform very well, exceptionally well. You have to build a very good reputation from whatever space you find yourself. I didn't start by getting into politics. I succeeded very well in business as a member of Junior Chamber International at 18. I grew up the ranks, learned how to do my manifesto, learned how to politic. Then most especially, you have to build a strong support team from your family base. Because as a female or as a woman who is aspiring to become an ambassador, you will be posted out of the country. So you need a very strong support team in your family that will be cooperative, to go with you, to work with you, and all of that. That is very important. And again, you must also have a strong network. Because in all of this, there's a bit of politics, positive politics. Somebody must recommend you. And so your performance has to be exceptional in everything you do. And then you have to be impactful. For me, every office I held, I tried to leave my footprints in the sense of time. So somebody recommends me to somebody, and before you know, you find your name out there. And then when they carry out investigations about you, there are no ifs and buts, and before you know it, you're appointed an ambassador. I know you can. Time will not permit me to go into details, but this is an area I love to talk about. I know we have great women that will come into the space where we are today to do great things for Nigeria. It's been very heartwarming over here. A lot has been done between Jamaica and Nigeria and the other countries I represent. I'm also a female champion in the aspect of the seabed, where we're encouraging more women into the sciences area so that they could tomorrow be recommended to becoming ambassadors and permanent representatives of our great country. I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Tamido. Thank you. Smashing. Thank you so much. I now hand over to Ali do we have enough time for Q&A or whatever we can have of it?
We might be able to take just about 2 or 3 more questions from the audience. So thank you very much. But first, can we please put our hands together for this rich panel full of so much knowledge? And may I ask, just by show of hands, how many women hope to be ambassadors someday? I could see you taking notes. So it's time to maybe go back to school, dust your certificates, go back to reading, putting in the work, and praying. Very important. So at this point, we'd like to open the floor for questions. We have the microphones. So I think we took from this side of the hall the other time. We might be taking from, you have a question, please head to the microphone. Tell us your name. If you would like to direct your question to any member of the panel, please go ahead. If not, anyone who chooses to can do so. Can we make it short, sharp, sweet? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Oluwatoyin Asada. I'm a lawyer. And this panel, I have a peculiar interest in this panel because talking about, leading beyond borders. And it's because I've always wanted to, on the long run, be globally relevant in whatever I'm doing. So I want to ask the panelists, anybody, can answer the question. If you cast your mind back to your career thus far, how do you think in our positions right now? Because we'll be killing ourselves if we think everybody here will end up becoming diplomats. So I think my question is, at the stage where we are right now, how can we position ourselves to be globally relevant in anything we are doing? How can we start? What steps can we take? Thank you.
Thank you, my learned colleague, for that good question. You're already on the right path. You have a degree in law, so you're on the right path to becoming an ambassador. Please, will any member of the panel do us the honors?
Any volunteers? Well, go for it. Go for it. Yeah.
I'm not sure I am very good at that because I'm not quite globally recognized. But I'm working on it. I think you're starting from the very correct spot, which is setting a goal for yourself and aiming very high. I'm a sports fan, and I will tell you my favorite sports phrase is Michael Jordan. Anybody know who Michael Jordan? Okay. I'm a little dating myself, I know, by saying his name, but he said you miss every single shot you don't take. And if you don't believe in yourself and you don't believe that you can achieve something and you don't try, you're never going to do it. So how do you develop a globally recognized brand, a globally recognized business partner? You aim very high. You decide who you are and who you want to be to yourself. Are you high end? Are you low end? Who's your market? And then you just go for it, and you don't ever give up.
Thank you.
All right, we have question number 2, your name and your question.
Okay, my name is Florence Feikemi Egbeyemi. I do a 9 to 5, but I'm a politician as well. I've served my community in the last 7 years, and I've tried as much as possible to bring politics home to the rural people. As you are well read, you are well connected. There are thousands of women back in the villages who need you and I. But I tell you, bringing forth into that realm of power and opportunity to help these women is very difficult. And my question or my admonition to this committee is to bring men who create the policy and the opportunity to be part of this system of what we are doing today. Because we will say it, we will go away another year. And we'll come back next year and say the same thing. I don't want to say that anymore. I aspired twice for the House of Representatives. I am from Ado Daughter, local government. And I know how many women who are hungry in that vicinity where I come from, who needs you and I, who are very educated, who are well connected, who needs you beyond here, sitting down, writing policies, to come and do the right thing. So my advice to you, the big ladies who have held us a hand for years, because I've attended it severally, we need you. People like me needs you. If you have the connect to put me in the House of Rep, take me there, and I will do something. Secondly, ladies, when you go back home, please start a foundation, do something for your people. It's not about pancake and all the rest. There are hungry women and children, and there are youths who are dangerously equipping themselves daily. The corridor where I come from, you see youth going by the border, bringing arms every day. Who are they going to use again? It's people like us. So reality has come home. Give me the opportunity to serve, if you have it. Give yourself the opportunity to serve, if you have it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, wow. What a politician indeed. It's the 2 fingers in the air for me.
We will not ask you which political party you belong
One
to.
house, please. One house, please. Do we maybe have any reactions to what she has said? Okay, go ahead. Okay. Please, can we make this very quick? 30 seconds. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dika Doswinako. I want to ask a question concerning the starting industry. You not really recognize much. How do you become an ambassador in that sector, and what do you do?
Did you hear that? Who heard her? In what sector, madam? Ambassador in which sector?
Hospitality.
Oh, hospitality. You don't know. Ambassador Blackman, do we still have you?
Unfortunately, we might not be able to take more questions. Please, we will have to stick with those who are already on the queue. We apologize. Please, we've run out of time.
Yes.
Thank you. After this, we might not be able to take any other question. We're so sorry.
I was going to ask someone to respond to answer her question. Ambassador Blackman, do we still have you? Or Ambassador Tamino?
Yes.
Yes, please. Do you want to attempt to answer that question, please? Ambassador in hospitality.
Which one? Sorry.
The lady just asked a question, how do you become an ambassador in hospitality? I'm not sure I quite understand what it means.
I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah.
Neither do I. I'm sorry. I don't know.
Yeah, go on. Where's your microphone?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think our sister was talking about becoming a goodwill ambassador. So you can become a goodwill ambassador for a cause in any community where you are. You can be a goodwill ambassador for, let's say, an organization that promotes or works with disabled people. Or you can support any goodwill cause and somebody will call you a goodwill ambassador. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Chogo Ako, and my question is directed to Ambassador Maureen Tamino. You did say when you were talking earlier that you cut your teeth in the JCI, and I recall that you were among those who I watched when I was also rising in the same system. Now my question, you got close to the top of the organization, and then you dropped out without quite taking the #1 position. Why did you do that? And would you do the same now? And if not, what would be different?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. The JCI has to do with age. You lead between age 18 and 40. I was 40 when I became executive vice president, and so I couldn't vie for the presidency, and so I left. For being an ambassador, it has no age limit. So we keep striving to go beyond where we are. And I'd like to tell you that I have a lot of mentees still in the junior chambers that are doing very well and that are aspiring, a lot of people. And I want to thank you. And junior chamber was a wonderful place, just like the Wimbies is. And I thank you for this question.
And unfortunately, we've run out, please.
Just a minute.
But they might not respond, but go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, good afternoon, the moderators and the founders of Wimbies. My own is simple, a question. What are the processes of assessing funds for those that want to go into business and those that have dreams? Personally, I have a dream. I want to become a farmer. I have well of dreams of what I want to do in farming industry. I have passion for rearing of fish, rearing of poultry.
But you have a struggle with accessing
but I don't have
funds.
facilities
All
to
right.
go into that. So what are the facilities? Is there
Available.
processes which the Wimbies can help women to access, to enable them get established and get expanded in whatever they see themselves to do?
Okay, so this is a question targeted at Wimbies. I'm sure that when we come back when we get to the next plenary, I'll probably push it to the next plenary and we can have that answered if that's okay. Thank you so much for asking. That's a very important question there. And can we please put our hands together for our plenary? Thank you. Thank you for the wealth of information. And it's okay to do a selfie or two. It's fine. Yes, you can. And while that is going on,
See why
love
I
it.
call him the most popular man on stage.
So can we please put our hands together for the plenary as they make their way to the wall over there? And joining them at this point, can we specially welcome Mrs. Awuneba Ajumogobia, the chairperson for the audit committee. She'll be joining for a picture quickly, and then we'll move over to the red carpet.